This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Cadillac Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Cadillac.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
This is Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. I'm in Washington, D.C. today at the personal invitation of President Donald Trump, my friend of 45 years, to participate in the inauguration of our 45th and 47th president. President Trump's victory rally is starting just now at the Capital One Center, and of course tonight is the official candlelight dinner. To guest host my show today, they wanted somebody who was charming, articulate, and interesting, as well as entertaining. That person was not available, unfortunately, so they got Frank Morano. Seriously, Frank Morano knows more about radio than anyone on the planet, so you're in good hands today with my friend Frank Morano. I'll be popping in from time to time with updates on the official inaugural activities. So here's my friend, guest host, Frank Morano, right here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
Thank you, Roger Stone. It is great to be here. Now, I am Frank Morano, as Roger was kind enough to mention in that very kind, tongue very much in cheek introduction. And I am on the radio myself. I host an overnight show. It's syndicated not only on Roger's flagship station, WABC in New York, but coast to coast. And but before I was on the radio, I was a big radio listener, and I had a lot of favorite radio talk show hosts over the years, people like Bob Grant, Jay Diamond, Rush Limbaugh, Howard Stern, Tom Leykis, the list goes on and on. And inevitably, whoever my favorite host was, when there was a substitute host, I would always get really excited to listen to them. And whenever there was a substitute host, you could hear the groans from a mile away. I would just say, "Oh no, nothing, no disrespect against whatever, but no, I don't want to hear that guy. I want to hear Rush Limbaugh." I'm sure a lot of you are looking forward on the eve of this historic presidential inauguration to hearing Roger Stone, but don't groan. As you heard Roger mention, I do know a fair amount about radio. Now, I don't know very much about politics. Roger does. But between the two of us, Roger doesn't know about radio. I don't know about politics. Hopefully, we can have a little bit of the other's luster rub off on one another, and it can make the show sound listenable for the next 3 hours. And for no other reason, Roger himself is going to check in. I just spoke with him a couple of minutes ago right before the show, and he is up to some exciting stuff, by the way. If you thought this inauguration was not going to be exciting because they're moving things indoors or because of the cold weather, I just spoke with Roger, and you couldn't be further from the truth. So we're going to get into that. Also, it's a historic day because TikTok was, people were panicked last night and this morning, genuinely so, that they were not able to access TikTok. I'm talking about both people that were creators and people that were, just folks that watch a lot of these videos on TikTok. So we're going to get into that as well. And we can't forget about the bigger story coming out of the Middle East, the situation involving this very tenuous ceasefire deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Someone who is an authority on all of that, especially what's going on in the Middle East, meaning she's an authority on the Trump administration, the Trump voter, the Trump campaign, and what's happening in the Middle East is Batya Ungar-Sargon from Newsweek. She is terrific. And whether you agree with her or not, a very, very bright woman who is going to give us her expertise. Now, I alluded to the fact that the inauguration is going to be moved inside. I am curious, I was surprised. I just kind of accepted it at face value that, all right, well, I have to move it inside because it's cold. Since that announcement, I have been, in my friends, my acquaintances, my listeners, my social group, I have been deluged with suggestions of people that say, yeah, you really believe that's due to the weather? There are a whole lot of other theories that there might be some alternative reason as to why the Trump inauguration is moved indoors. I'd love to hear your suggestions or your thoughts. Do you just accept what they're saying, that it's the weather, or do you think there's something else here? If you have a thought, let me hear from you. Our number is 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. Our telephone talent coordinator for the day is Eric, who is making his maiden voyage as a telephone talent coordinator, at least with me. I don't know if he's worked on other programs, but at least with me, this is the first time he and I have worked together. And he's probably a little nervous, doesn't even have Red Apple Audio Group email station, set up yet. But because this is his first trial by fire, we want to make sure he works it. And that's not just for my benefit or because I get some perverse thrill out of seeing someone that's already nervous answering the phone, nonstop. That's because if today is his toughest day as a telephone talent coordinator, then it's all gravy from here. It's all downhill from here. So give me a call. Our number is 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. Right now, there are 10 open lines, but hopefully those will fill quickly. And you could say hello to Eric and welcome him aboard to our radio family, if no other reason. Now, next hour, I am hoping to put together a collection of historians to analyze the Trump administration and the dawn of Trump 2 and put that in a broader historical perspective. So I've reached out to a number of historians across the political spectrum. They may join us. If they don't, we're going to, we'll find something else to talk about, hopefully. And we may be joined as well by some alumni from the first Trump administration, including former Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross. There's a lot of excitement in some quarters about the Trump economic agenda, which I think it was Scott Bessent referred to as Trumponomics in his confirmation hearing. And there's a lot of nervousness in other quarters, whether we're talking taxes, whether we're talking tariffs, whether we're talking anything else. So we'll find out what that's like. And obviously there is a lot of news unrelated to President Trump and the inauguration. But obviously, look, it's the big news. Tomorrow, it's going to be only the second time in American history that a president is going to be sworn in for his second non-consecutive term. So it is a big deal. And sometimes you don't realize you're watching history. There are other times where you're very cognizant of the fact that you are living and watching history. This is the latter. So let me hear from you, 646-720-0635. So the decision to move the inauguration indoors, I believe this was President-elect Trump's decision to make this move. They cited concerns over extreme weather and potential security risks. I am wondering if it's more about the potential security risks than the extreme weather. Sure, it's going to be cold, and sure, President Trump gives long speeches, and sure, William Henry Harrison delivered his inaugural address without a coat on, and I believe caught pneumonia, and ultimately had the shortest presidency of any president in history, and I don't think Donald Trump wants that to happen, and, he's been known to give long speeches. So I am thinking that given the fact that Trump has already been subjected to two separate, at least, assassination attempts and who knows how many threats that we don't even know about, I am thinking that's more what this is about. But the forecast is set to dip dangerously low. I think it's more about safety concerns. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe there's something else at play. If you have a theory, I'd love to know it. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. At the very least, give us a call so that we know Eric has earned his stripes as a telephone talent coordinator. We'll see where that goes. Batya Ungar-Sargon joining us in just a minute as well. Hey, if you want to join me on Twitter, you can do so at Frank Morano. That's Frank Morano. And we're also on Facebook at facebook.com/Morano fan. That's facebook.com/Morano fan if you care to comment. All right. Now, in terms of my history with Roger Stone, I have had the good fortune of knowing Roger Stone for a long time. And we got to know one another in around 1999, 2000, when he was the chairman of the Presidential Exploratory Committee for someone that was thinking of running for president as a third-party candidate, the Reform Party candidate. And that was a fella, some obscure real estate developer out of New York. I don't remember whatever happened to him. And then we worked together on that draft Trump campaign back in 2000. And then I got to know Roger really well in 2002 when he was running Tom Golisano's campaign for governor of New York. And since then, honestly, we've been inseparable. I've known Roger when he was the toast of the town and when he was being roasted all over town. And I have to tell you, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that I don't think Roger would like anybody to know, because it's not good for his reputation. He is a great guy. He's got this reputation that he's cultivated as the master of the dark arts, as a political dirty trickster. And look, does he utilize hard-edged political tactics from time to time? Sure. The truth is, when it comes to being a husband, a father, a friend, a pet owner, and a dog lover, he's a wonderful guy. I've seen him go out of his way for people that you've never heard of. He's not just catering to the wealthy and powerful. All right, let's squeeze in a couple of calls here before we get to Batya Ungar-Sargon. First, let me say hello to Sandra. Sandra, what do you make of this inauguration being indoors? Are you suspect?
Well, no. First of all, I feel, let's keep this man safe. And I feel that deep down, that's the reason it's going to be indoors. Better safe than sorry. He already had 2 attempts on his life. So I'm very happy that it's going to be held indoors. And also, Frank, they even mentioned the poor horses outside and the dogs outside. They're going to be freezing. Who wants to be cold? We all want to enjoy the event. So you know what? For 2 reasons. 1, he's going to be safer. And 2, everyone will enjoy it more if it's indoors.
Sandra, I agree with you. Thank you for the call. One of the reasons I didn't want to go is because it was going to be frigid cold weather, and I didn't want to stand outside in the cold. I know there are a lot of people that got these. I don't know if you buy them, but they bought these VIP inauguration tickets, and now they're not going to be able to get the same bang for their buck. But I agree. Who wants to stand outside in the cold? But Gracie in Rockland County, what's your take on this?
Hi, my take on this is obviously it's for safety, but bottom line is who cares as long as he gets inaugurated, because it can't come soon enough. Now, if it is cold, it would keep off the crazy people, because, the rioters and the people on the left, the conditions, in my opinion, have to be good for them to riot. And if it's cold, I don't think they're going to go out to riot.
Gracie, thank you. It's always a treat to hear from you. All right, we're going to go. We're going to talk with Batya Ungar-Sargon in just a minute. She is brilliant. If you don't believe me, you will find out straight ahead.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Jif peanut butter. It's that jiffing good. It doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jif. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jif at Jif.com.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it is not Roger Stone. It is his friend and colleague, Frank Morano. And I am doing my best to hold down the fort as Roger is probably doing his thing, at a cocktail party somewhere and being the toast of the town. I am going to chat with Batya Ungar-Sargon in just a minute. She had this incredible book that I think really explores the phenomenon of why Donald Trump had such appeal to working class Americans. It's called Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Class Men and Women. We're going to get into that in a minute. I'd like to spend some time discussing TikTok, which is apparently back. Proponents of the TikTok ban, including people like Senator Tom Cotton, they claim that it's in the national interest to prevent communist China from collecting Americans' data. Perhaps that's true. But others think that, well, maybe it's not necessarily in the best interests of America, but it's in the best interest of the U.S. security state to expand their control of the internet. So we'll try and get into that a little bit later as well. But I did want to try and chat with as many of you as possible. First, let me say hello to Mike in Georgia. Mike, what station are you listening to us on?
Well, on the internet.
Wonderful. Great. The internet is a great thing, perhaps exactly because you can listen to any radio station you want. Good for you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Yeah. No, it is cold. I mean, down here tonight, for example, I'm in Northwood, Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, by the way, for what that's worth. Mm-hmm. It's going to be down to about 18 degrees. That's cold as a well digger's butt. So, yeah, I can see it's a good excuse for the Secret Service to pull them in. But I think it's sort of like God took care of the president up in Butler when he made him turn his head. And I think this time God said, okay, let's make it real cold. He's going to have to go in. The Secret Service says, okay, we now have plausible deniability. So we're going to bring him in, and we don't have to worry about all the drones and all the other idiots out there. So I think it just kind of worked out, and God said, okay, take a break, guys, and take care of the man and make him the as Rita likes to say so often, the new sheriff in town.
There you go, Mike. And thank you. And as the previous caller mentioned, I think it was Gracie, at the end of the day, whether he takes the inauguration indoors or outdoors, whether it's on his mother's Bible or a Trump Bible, at the end of the day, he's still the president just as much, no matter where he gets sworn in. That's why I've always thought, and I recognize a lot of the people are into the pageantry, I've always thought that a lot of this is just silly, that you don't necessarily need to make it a big show because you're the commander-in-chief. Oh, as soon as you say so, no matter what. I mean, not as soon as you say so, but as soon as you take that oath, no matter what. All right, Jacqueline, John, William, Charlie, we'll get to you throughout the course of the hour. We'll hear from the man himself, Roger Stone, as well. But coming up in a moment, we'll chat with Batya Ungar-Sargon about working-class America and this peace deal in the Middle East. You're listening to the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. I'm Frank Morano sitting in. We'll continue straight ahead.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
No, it is not Roger Stone. It is Frank Morano, his friend and colleague of a quarter century, a colleague of late. But you're in luck, because even if I don't have anything insightful to say, I guarantee you Batya Ungar-Sargon does. If you're unfamiliar with Batya Ungar-Sargon, she is the opinion editor at Newsweek. She's also the author of the book, Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Class Men and Women. And aside from being someone that's very intelligent and with in a general very cheery disposition, she has expertise on a number of different issues, both domestic political issues, geopolitical issues, foreign policy issues. And she actually goes out and talks to people, which shockingly gives her a much better idea what average everyday Americans think about what's going on in Washington, as opposed to other colleagues of hers who just stay into their normal political bubble. And she's also one of the few guests that I've had. Usually you have a guest on that will express strong opinions, especially about the Middle East, and you'll have people who agree with that person say, oh, that was the greatest guest you ever had, and the people that disagree say, oh, I can't believe you had that person on. She is one of the few guests I've ever had that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you end up impressed with Batya Ungar-Sargon's analysis and her capability of being a wonderful communicator. Batya, it is great to talk with you again. Appreciate you joining me.
Oh my gosh, Frank, I'm so humbled by that. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here with you and your listeners.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I know you're very much in demand inauguration weekend, so I appreciate you making some time for me. Let's get in first to the situation we're going to be observing tomorrow. I thought there was a good chance that Donald Trump was going to win. I didn't think there was a chance that he was going to win the popular vote. I certainly didn't think he was likely to win every single swing state. I thought he'd win the election maybe, but I view this as, a pretty impressive mandate, even if others may disagree. You kind of saw this coming. You did a lot of interviews for your book, Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Class Men and Women. And a lot of the folks that you spoke to seemed to portend the Trump victory. Something tells me you weren't at all surprised.
Yeah, I had this feeling that he was going to win in a landslide. I mean, I never thought he was going to win the popular vote for a Republican. To do that, that's huge. But I had a feeling that he was going to do very well because I knew a lot of people. I'd interviewed a lot of people for my book who were Democrats historically, but who just could no longer deny that the economy that Trump had built was so much better for them. And, the first time round, the media did such a good job of just lying on Trump and portraying him as racist and homophobic and sexist and all of these things. And all of that just started to fall apart during the Biden administration when it became clear how little the Democrats cared about average people. And suddenly a lot of regular people who never would have voted for Republican before started looking at the way in which Trump had very intentionally crafted an economy that did what the Democrats always promised to do but never did, meaning like an economy that raised all ships, kind of like a rising tide. And working people can point to the exact policies he put in place that really made their wages go up for the first time in a generation. So like a lot of the lies started to fall apart. And I think, just as the Biden administration and term wore on, the lying that the media was doing on behalf of Joe Biden was so naked and obvious that people started to go back and say, wait, what if they were lying to me this whole time about who Trump is? And I think that was like, it was like this weird watershed where people started to just not believe anything, any of the lies that they were being told that they'd believed before. And his support just grew and grew and grew. People went back to the policies of first administration and said, wait a minute, we actually want less immigration. We actually want less free trade, you know? And then they went back and said, actually, he kind of was pretty pro-gay. Like, he had a lot of gay people in his cabinet. Actually, he wasn't racist. He released 5,000 black men from prison, you know? I'm like, wait a minute. Actually, he's pretty pro-union. And then suddenly, like, there was just this, basically, the man that the media told us was the great divider unified the American working class of all races around the idea of the American dream. And I think that's what we really saw.
You know, you sort of anticipated my next question. My question was going to be, why do working class people who may have a difficult time making ends meet, why do they relate to someone who's a billionaire, who didn't grow up poor, who grew up very much a child of privilege, was Ivy League educated, and if you dates supermodels and hangs out with the super wealthy and celebrities? My question was going to be why they relate more to him than some other politicians with more conventional blue-collar roots and a blue-collar background. But it sounds like the reason that it's less about stylistically relating to him and more about substantively related to him and his policies.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think in the end of the campaign, it really became clear when he did the McDonald's stint and the garbage truck stint, how much he loves working class people, working class culture, like how much he relates to them. But I don't think that's why people voted for him. I think they felt that he couldn't be bought, and they are right that he can't be bought. Like, they were right about that. And, you know, the fact that he was so rich made him be able to take on not just the elites of the Democratic Party, but the elites of the Republican Party. I mean, you saw he made quick work of that Project 2025. He basically humiliated them and said, actually, this doesn't represent me. This doesn't represent American voters. This is not what I'm going to do. Forget that. He took on the donor class. Wall Street, for the third time in a row, sided with the Democrats over the Republicans because they can't stand Donald Trump because he doesn't believe in what they believe in. He doesn't believe in screwing over workers for the bottom line of the oligarchs. Honestly, we're going to see this come to a head with Elon Musk and the whole H-1B visa fight, and we could talk about that if you want. But I would say they don't relate to Trump. They think that he put in place very intentionally an economic agenda that was tailor-made to protect the value of the labor of the American worker, as opposed to the free market right or the distributionist left. So what the Democrats want for an economy is basically like all of their base is now the college educated. So what they want is for their base to be working in the knowledge industry, making, you know, $250,000, $500,000 a year, for all manufacturing to be shipped to China and done by slaves in China, and for all service industry jobs that remain here to be done by a slave caste imported by cartels from like failed socialist states, right? That's the economy that the Democrats built over the last 40 years. On the right, before Trump, what you had was the sort of trickle-down version where basically it was free trade and tax cuts for the rich and a very pro-corporation mentality. And then there as well, the working class kind of got cut out of the picture. And Trump said, we're not doing either of those things. We're not going to have free trade with China, which is our greatest adversary, but we're also not going to do this redistribution that the Democrats like, where their rich people get richer and richer and richer, and they get higher and higher taxes, and then we take those taxes and give it to working class people and sort of pay them off because their jobs no longer pay with the American dream. No, Trump said we're not doing any of that. We're going to look at who is the American worker and how do I protect the value of their labor? How do I make their wages go up? And the way that you do that is, number one, by limiting the supply of labor, by closing the border. Suddenly, every working class person has immeasurably more negotiating power because they have less competition, right? It's the most obvious thing. And then second, with trade, with tariffs, we're going to make it expensive for companies to ship their manufacturing overseas to be done by slaves. We're going to make it cheaper for them to stay here. And that was really the two things that I heard the most from working class people, that this is how he made my wages go up.
Very interesting. You know, I voted for Trump. Excuse me. I voted for Trump, but I have a lot of friends and family members that are not Trump supporters at all, and a lot of listeners that are not Trump supporters at all. And honestly, I prefer it that way. I like people getting together, and I like learning from people that may view the situation differently than I do. And, I would say 9 times out of 10, the points that they bring up causes me to, think differently about my own position. I mean, sometimes people are just haters and will disagree with something because Trump was for it. But I really do try to spend a lot of time talking with folks that view the world differently than I do. And one of the things that I hear from a lot of Trump critics, especially Democratic Trump critics, is that essentially Trump has been able to engineer this gigantic con on the working class. Sure, he speaks the language of the working class on different things like McDonald's, different cultural issues. He speaks the way normal people speak. But what does he do once he gets office? He pushes through a massive tax cut that the overwhelming beneficiaries of which are the top 1%. He's pushing through tariffs, which might, if the naysayers are correct, raise prices for this very same working class people that love him, and not necessarily really doing anything to improve access to health care in a lot of very red states where they don't necessarily have the best access to health care. Speak to those Democratic criticisms of Trumponomics, if you would.
Okay, so there's 3 things you brought up. The tax cuts, tariffs, and then healthcare. I would say on the healthcare, I think they're right. That's the only thing I think he's vulnerable to. And I hope that, in bringing in RFK Jr., this signals a real interest on behalf of Republicans to take seriously the question of healthcare, because the number one thing I found when I was traveling around the country interviewing working class people was that the vast majority of them, whether they vote for Democrats or Republicans, want much less immigration and much more access to health care. So the first party that gets to that combination is going to have a ruling majority for a very long time. And, if the Republicans want to cede that ground to Democrats, at some point the Democrats are going to find their way back to being, restrictionist on immigration. It might take 10 years, it might take 20 years, but it's going to happen, and they already have the health care piece. So I would urge Republicans to take that very seriously. Mm-hmm. You cannot have, a healthy, civilized workforce when people feel like they can't afford adequate health care. So that's the only one I think, they may have a point. The other 2 I think are total nonsense. First of all, the tax cuts, rich people got tax cuts, but who got it 3-4 times more in terms of percentages of tax cuts is the working class and the middle class, who got between 15 and 25% tax cuts compared to between 1 and 5% of tax cuts for the super rich, for the 1%. So of course, if you're in the 1% and you get a 5% tax cut, that's going to be a lot more money in total than if you are making $80,000 a year and you get a $20% tax cut. But if you're making $80,000 a year and you get a 20% tax cut, that means a lot more to you. And that's why working class people, they really don't have class resentment against the billionaires. They're not like, the rentier, over-credentialed college elites who loathe the billionaires because they feel so much class resentment that they don't get to fly, in private jets. They have to settle for first class and business class, right? Working class people don't think that way. They see billionaires as jobs creators, and they often admire them the way they admire Trump. So I think that tax cut thing is patently false. In terms of tariffs, what China did when Trump slapped 25% tariffs on them? They did what every economist says they would never do.
Right, they lowered their prices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, Frank, because people just pretend they didn't do that. They dropped their prices by 25% because, of course, China has an industrial economy.
Right. They still really want access to American consumers.
Exactly. Yeah. They have to just keep those factories going no matter what. And by the way, they raised prices on Europe by 25%.
I am pro-tariff, just to be clear, whether it's Democrats like Bernie Sanders proposing it or conservatives like Donald Trump or Pat Buchanan proposing it. But you've heard the anti-tariff argument before, I'm sure. So that's why I bring it up. Yeah. Batya, I want to get your take on the Middle East, but before I do, two-part question. Well, actually, look, I'm getting a little carried away. I'm thinking it's overnights, and I still have 4 hours to speak all night. Let me limit it to one question. Are there Democrats on the scene today who speak in terms of both issues and stylistically in a way that appeals to working class voters. For instance, if the Democrats had nominated blank, maybe they would have had a better showing with working class voters in this past election. And if they nominate blank in 2028, perhaps they'll be able to win back some of these blue collar voters.
Well, I think Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman are the two people who come to mind. I don't think either of them is electable as president. John Fetterman because of his disability, unfortunately, and Bernie Sanders because he's so old. But they are the people to be watching as influencers. If the Democratic Party looks to them as the model, that's the future for them. If they don't, if they look to, Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg, these are the losers of the party, and this is going to be a disaster for them and very, very good for the MAGA wing. You have to understand whoever they pick is going to be going up against the second most talented politician that the Republicans have seen in a generation, who is J.D. Vance. And he's young, and he's brilliant, and he's a very effective communicator. They really have to be – it's amazing. I'm sure you noticed this, Frank, but the whole nomination of Trump's cabinet, all of the hearings this week, these are young, good-looking, vigorous people in their 40s and 50s. I mean, the bench is wide, and it's full of talent. And who do the Democrats have? I mean, it's very hard to sort of point to somebody and say, like, okay, this is who they should be elevating. I think Ruben Gallego would be really good. He's done a real 180 on immigration.
Batya, I have to. Hey, you have 4 minutes? You want to hang around 4 minutes? I have to ask you about the Middle East, and I'm out of time here. Can you hang? Okay, great. Batya Ungar-Sargon is going to stick around a few minutes. I want to get her take on this Middle East deal. If you want to comment on any portion of our conversation, you can give me a call, 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. We'll continue with Batya Ungar-Sargon straight ahead.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
No, it's not Roger Stone. It's Frank Morano. We've been talking with Batya Ungar-Sargon. You got to check out her book. It's called Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Class Men and Women. We only have 2 minutes here, Batya, but I have to ask you your thoughts on the Gaza ceasefire deal. What do you think of the deal in general? And do you think this is a ceasefire that's going to hold?
I'm one of the very few people who thinks it's a good deal. I think when barbarians invade your homeland and rape your women and steal your women, you have to get your women back, and they're getting their women back. And I just feel like I have no words to thank Donald Trump for this, because obviously it never would have happened without him. If Biden had been, or Kamala Harris had been elected on November 5th, there would be no hope for these hostages. So it's just an unbelievable moment. I'm so grateful to God and to Donald Trump that this actually happened. Steve Witkoff did an amazing job. He had to bully both the Qataris and Bibi Netanyahu, who did not want to say yes to the deal. Hamas's capabilities are deeply, deeply degraded. And I don't know why everybody's acting like that's not the case. October 7th happened because Israel misunderstood where the threat was coming from. They thought it was coming from Hezbollah and from the north. And we saw how prepared they were to take on Hezbollah. They decimated them in 2 weeks. They took their eye off the border because they thought Hamas was not a threat. It is a threat. Okay. They know how to police a border. They just weren't doing it. So I think that as long as we can get through the three
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Oh, no, it is not Roger Stone, but it is the Frankster, Frank Morano, holding down the fort. Roger will join us this hour to give us an update on what things are like in Washington, D.C., on the eve of the historic Trump inauguration. Historic on many different levels, not the least of which because Donald Trump has become only the second person in American history to be elected to a second non-consecutive term. Many have tried. But in fact, we're going to find out from a presidential historian momentarily some of the other folks that have tried to make that transition before. And as we talk with Ted Widmer in a little bit, and we'll chat with Roger Stone as well. You know what's interesting? And I know a lot of you, I'm probably competing with football in the playoffs right now. By the way, if you're listening to me instead of watching the Eagles and the Rams, it's a very tight game. I don't want anybody changing the channel, but I think it's tighter than a lot of people imagined. It's 13-10. I think most people are rooting for LA, not only because of the fires there and everything that community has had to deal with, but because I feel like the Eagles fans, and I have a lot of friends that are Eagles fans, everyone loves to just root against the Eagles fans because the Eagles are such poor sports and they're just so rude. You saw that in the recent situation where you had that one fan who was caught on tape berating and cursing at a woman who was rooting for an opposing team. But I'm not taking anything away from the Eagles. They've had a great season. But the game I'm really looking forward to watching is going to be after this show is over, the Bills game today. I'd love to see the Bills win, not only because I'm a New Yorker and that's New York's only football team, but because I have placed a small wager on the game. And hopefully things turn out better for me in the Bills game than they did in the Lions game yesterday. Fingers crossed, we'll see. You know what's interesting, though? And I'm going to get back to your calls in a moment at 646-720-0635. This is the question I would love for you to ponder and come up with an answer for. When Trump was inaugurated 8 years ago, there were, and it was cold, not as cold as this, but it was cold. There were all sorts of people taking to the streets to protest, to the Million Women March, the Million Muslim March. There were all these people taking to the streets of Washington, D.C., wearing vagina hats, to put it politely. There were all people proudly labeling themselves the resistance. And you got the sense that there were these wide swaths of the country that was not going to accept Trump as their president. Then, 4 years ago, it was the same thing in many respects without the hats with Biden. You had more on January 6th and January 20th. You had all these people that did not want to accept the fact that Biden was their president. I'll be honest, I'm sure there'll be some people protesting tomorrow. I am not seeing it this time around. I don't see any organized resistance in any significant way refusing to accept the result of this election. Now, perhaps that's because, unlike in 2016, there's no taint of Russiagate and that Russiagate hysteria. There's no doubt about a mandate because he did win the popular vote. Maybe it's because, unlike 4 years ago, there are not wide swaths of the American population that have concerns about whether or not this result of this election were on the up and up. But I'm wondering why you think, and I raised this question on a different way with Brian Kilmeade in my weekly chat with him on Thursday. I'm wondering why you think that's the case. Why the reaction to Trump this time around is so different than in 2017. Because in 2017, I couldn't imagine a scenario in which you would have seen Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg all sitting front and center at the inauguration. And yet that's exactly what's going to be happening this time around. So whether it's the average rank and file voter who didn't vote for Trump or these, big tech oligarchs, I'm wondering why there's such a different reaction this time around. Maybe it's because they saw Trump got elected and didn't throw all of his political opponents into concentration camps. Maybe it's a reflection of, all right, we didn't like Trump, but things were better than they were under Biden. Or maybe it's something else. What do you think? 646-720-0635. Because I'll tell you just one quick anecdote. A friend of mine, close friend, is a Democratic political operative. He's done a lot. He's not a household name, but he's a household name within New York City politics. And he invited myself and a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, who's a big Trump supporter, to his birthday party last weekend. And my friend has this custom jacket. It's a suit jacket or, it's a sports jacket, but it's got Donald Trump's face all over the sports jacket. It's very funny, but it's a living tribute to Trump, essentially, this jacket. So my friend, the Trump supporter, calls my friend whose birthday it was. He says, listen, I know there's going to be a lot of Democratic politicians there. I don't want to get you in any hot water. I don't want to upset anybody. You think it's okay if I wear this jacket? And he sends him a photo. And my friend says, my friend is Jack, he says, yeah, it'll be hysterical. That'll be hilarious. Make sure you wear it. And so my friend John, who's the Trump supporter, comes to this party, wears the jacket. And not only was there nobody hissing and booing at him. And this is, I'm saying, a room that's 80% Democratic. And of that 80%, at least half of whom are politicians and political operatives, members of the New York City Council, commissioners and others, consultants, former politicians. And an amazing thing happened. So many Democratic politicians and Democratic political operatives, they wanted to take a picture with my friend wearing that jacket. Years ago, I think they'd rather be caught dead than be in a picture with that jacket. And he would say, why do you want to take a picture with this jacket? He says, I have to send this to my aunt. She's a huge Trump supporter. She's going to love that jacket. Or, my best friend is a big Trump supporter and he's going to get a kick out of this. Or, I just think the jacket's hysterical. I don't know anyone that's a Trump supporter, but I think it'd be fun. This is a very different reaction this time around. I think it's a good reaction. Because you don't want to see the country, further divided and further polarized, as was the case in the aftermath of both 2016 and 2020. But I'm wondering if you have a theory as to why that's the case. 646-720-0635. The man himself, Roger Stone, will join me in just a bit. But first, let me say hello to Jacqueline in Brooklyn, who's an old friend of mine. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hello, Frank. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I'm glad to hear you filling in for Roger, although I love Roger as well. Regarding the inauguration, I think it's kind of a blessing on both sides. Number one, for President Trump's safety and for everyone's safety. And I always felt that, okay, the inauguration can't be moved from January, and the weather is what it is in D.C., being very cold in the winter. But I think it makes for a much more pleasant experience for everyone, the common folk that would like to attend and be present for the inauguration. I had been toying with it myself after the election in November, the results, and I said, it's going to be too much trouble, and you have to stay outdoors. It's going to be so cold. I don't want to do that. It's going to be difficult to get around. So I think for everyone concerned, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think you're certainly right. Do you think that there's also some concerns about security?
Probably so, as there rightfully should be in view of the occurrences that happened in the recent past. So that's why I say I think it's a twofold blessing to help keep the president and everyone safe and also, protect everyone from the cold weather being very unpleasant.
Jacqueline, thank you. Appreciate that. 646-720-0635. We're going to talk with historian Ted Widmer in just a bit. But first, let me say hello to Charlie in Texas. Charlie, all of my exes live in Texas. If you run into any of them, please give them my best.
Will do, Frank. Will do. I just wanted to comment on this whole idea about Bezos and all of these celebrities that have come out and endorsed Trump. I really think this goes back to the election attempt, and ever since that moment of him standing on stage with his fist in the air.
You mean the assassination attempt?
Yes, I'm sorry, the assassination attempt. With his fist in the air, blood coming down his face. I think that iconic moment, because after that you saw all these people come out online, and it was almost like the country said, all right, enough is enough. We may not agree with everything he says and the way he approaches it, but this man really is truly ready to walk through hell for the rest of the country. And at that moment, like I said, that's when celebrities started coming out online and just fully endorsing instead of maybe doing it behind closed doors. So I really think that was the moment.
That is so interesting if that's the case. Charlie, thank you for the call, because we've seen other presidential assassinations in throughout history, and even assassination attempts serve as unifying moments. We saw it with Garfield. We saw it with Kennedy, certainly. But I didn't get that impression with Trump. I got the sense that people were, happy he wasn't killed, but I didn't get the sense that there was that much of a thawing of the tensions that existed. But maybe you're right. Maybe that's the case. Hey, I'm so glad David in the Bronx has called in, because he views the world differently than I think a lot of listeners to the Roger Stone show typically do. And he's just a very intelligent guy and a very bright guy besides. David, first of all, do you agree with me that there doesn't seem to be this resistance to Trumpism as there was in 2017? And if you do agree, why do you think that's the case?
Oh, I agree. I think it's simply fatigue. I think after years of this and the media not doing its job by pointing out what's coming, people have just decided to sit back and see what happens.
So it's simple as that. It's like, we've been through this for 8 years. We're not going to keep taking to the streets if people keep voting this way.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of people like myself are taking a wait and see approach, because according to what I'm hearing right now, he's going to declare a national emergency as one of his first things tomorrow. So we'll see what happens after that.
We will see what happens. David, thank you. Hopefully I'll talk to you on the radio tonight. We're going to take a break and chat with historian Ted Widmer in just a moment, one of the brightest historians there are when it comes to presidential history. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. We'll continue. I'm Frank Morano. Straight ahead.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
No, it is not Roger Stone. It is the Frankster, Frank Morano. You can normally hear me overnights across America on The Other Side of Midnight. If you want to hear the podcast, if you like anything you hear, you can just search that, The Other Side of Midnight, on any podcast app. One of the people I've been lucky enough to chat with from time to time is Ted Widmer. He's a historian, a librarian, and the author of several presidential biographies, including about Lincoln and about Martin Van Buren. Dr. Widmer, it's great to talk with you. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Frank. Happy to be with you.
So I know that, everybody's been making the comparison to Grover Cleveland tomorrow because he was the first president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Several others had tried, including Theodore Roosevelt and including Martin Van Buren. Van Buren was known as a master political organizer. He was the architect of the Democratic Party, a New Yorker like Trump was. Do you see any parallels between Van Buren's ability to manage shifting political coalitions and how modern presidents, including Trump, navigate divided political landscapes?
Such an interesting question. I can't believe you're going to Van Buren instead of Lincoln.
Well, I'm going to get to Lincoln. I suspect Lincoln may require a longer answer, so I'm going to throw Van Buren at you first.
Well, yeah. I mean, Van Buren was coming up as governor of New York and vice president, then president, in a time of rapid political change and rapid demographic growth. So he was just trying to understand how quickly America was changing. And I think for the most part, he did a good job, except he was only a one-term president, got voted out of office because of a financial panic. But right now we're in heavy, heavy change. And I don't think we quite know where it's going yet. I think obviously the Republican Party is very strong right now, but it has internal tensions just within its own party, and the Democrats, too, may be changing a lot in the next year or two. So it's a very unpredictable time.
You know, I have 2 minutes here, and I hope you can stick around with us a few minutes after we have to break. But in Lincoln on the Verge, another terrific book that you wrote about Lincoln's second inauguration, you described Lincoln's journey to Washington and how he framed his message to a fractured nation. How do you think a figure like Lincoln would approach the hyper-polarized, hyper-partisan environment that we see in the country today?
He would try to pull us back from it. Both of his inaugurals tried to calm things down and bring Americans together. And the first one ends with beautiful language calling on our better angels to see in the other side, even at a time of great anger, as the Civil War is about to begin, but to see the humanity of the other side and pull us back from the brink. And 4 years later, 750,000 Americans had been killed. I mean, talk about anger. And again, he called for charity, not malice, and outlined a policy of forgiveness. It was kind of like his first Reconstruction speech. So he was always trying to lower the temperature.
We're talking with historian Ted Widmer. You also, Van Buren's presidency is often overshadowed, but he did set a few important precedents for how presidents manage crises, including the Panic of 1837. How do you think Trump's presidency might be viewed in terms of the precedents that it sets for executive power, either what we have already seen in the first term or what may be in store for the second term?
Well, he breaks the mold in so many ways. He communicates very differently. We don't usually see a long policy-centered speech from Donald Trump. We see, he speaks off the cuff in a way that is pretty impressive and pretty entertaining, but also sometimes it's very hard to figure out what the policies actually are.
You see that with TikTok now. We're going to ask you to hold that thought if you can. We're going to continue with Ted Widmer, historian, librarian, and author, in just a moment. This is the Rod Stone Show. Join in a moment as well. This is Frank Martin. We'll continue straight ahead.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Well, you're actually there, but since this is an historic occasion, I thought it might be appropriate to chat with a historian. So we're talking with Ted Widmer, historian and author who's written a couple of great books. One, Martin Van Buren, which was part of the American President series, and an amazing book that was critically acclaimed and a bestseller called Lincoln on the Verge, 13 Days to Washington. And they're both available on Amazon. Dr. Widmer, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Let's talk about the role of the media in shaping presidents. Both Van Buren and Lincoln lived in eras when the media was rapidly evolving, just as it's been in the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, it's difficult to imagine even 10 years ago TikTok being a factor in a presidential election. Now it's difficult to imagine a presidential election without TikTok.
Yeah.
How do you think these presidents would have adapted to a 24/7 news cycle and the impact of social media and social media's role in shaping public perception of leadership?
Pretty well, I think. They were both very intelligent. They were not very well educated. They were extremely smart in street smarts, and they had friends who worked for newspapers. And Van Buren was really good at figuring out ways to sort of lubricate the system to get state money or later federal money to sympathetic newspapers, and that wasn't looked down on at the time. Both parties did it, but he was very good at it. And Lincoln just, he was such a great shaper of language. He was never exactly a journalist, but sometimes he wrote anonymous things for the newspapers in Illinois, and he read them, and he was friends with editors, including in New York City. And so he just was very canny about getting his message out to people.
Van Buren was instrumental in formalizing the two-party system. Lincoln presided over the fracturing of the Whigs and the rise of the Republican Party. Given Trump's influence on remaking the Republican Party, for instance, when I say that, I mean, 10 years ago, if you would have met someone that was just a regular working class guy, didn't have a lot of money, maybe struggling to make ends meet, chances are pretty good, especially if they were a union member, that they were a Democrat. And if you met a super wealthy guy that belonged to a country club, was Ivy League educated, chances are pretty good that that guy was a Republican.
Right.
These days, it's almost the exact opposite, anecdotally, in my experiences. What do you think that we could be potentially witnessing another era of partisan realignment?
I do, actually. I think that's very predictive. I don't know where it's going to go, just like they didn't in the middle of the 1850s when the Whigs fell apart and the Republicans came up. But it does feel like things are changing very fast, including even, we're not even into tomorrow in the new presidency yet, but it feels like a rift is beginning between the MAGA Republicans and the Elon Musk billionaires. And they are quite different. I mean, they all got behind Donald Trump, but they are not the same as each other. So it will be very interesting to see where it goes.
On the eve of the Trump inauguration, do you feel any historical echoes from any of the periods you've written about? How does this moment compare to other contentious transfers of power in American history?
Well, you mentioned Grover Cleveland, so it's the only time except for Cleveland that a president who lost was able to win the following election and come back in, which is no small achievement. That's a big deal. I'm hoping we were talking about Lincoln a few minutes ago and how he always called for calm and unity. And I would love to see some of that. We had a very rancorous campaign, and it came from both sides, but I think it came a little more from the successful candidate. And I'd love to see us just come back together. It might be a kind of naive hope, but I think we're pulling at the strands a little too much, and I'd like to see the tapestry come back together for the good of the country.
Finally, and we've been talking with Ted Widmer, and you could check out, again, Lincoln on the Verge, a terrific book that's a must-read. You've written vividly about Lincoln's humanity during his 13 days to Washington. This is one of those moments where I think everybody around Trump, including the fellow that we're about to talk to in a minute, Roger Stone, realizes they're a part of history and witnessing history as it happens. If you were to write about Trump's journey to his inauguration, how would you approach that as a writer, and what historical themes would you explore?
There are fascinating themes. I think they're hard for us to because he has shattered the mold in so many ways. Coming from a place of great wealth into the presidency is pretty unusual in our country's history. When you said the journey, I was thinking of Lincoln, but I also was thinking of that golden escalator ride down from the top of the Trump Tower, which I never would have thought that would work. That's like corporate America is not that popular, and New York City is not that popular in the rest of the country. I mean, I love it. You love it. But in the rest of the country, it's often a punching bag for things gone wrong and excessive governance and the homeless. And yet he comes from all of that. And somehow he spun a story that was persuasive to a lot of people. So it is fascinating. And I hope after, riding a populist wave and also attacking the left pretty ferociously, I do hope we come back together. I hope he leads us back together, but even if he doesn't, I hope somehow we come back over policies, over shared patriotism. We're all fellow Americans. So, it's the beginning of a new day, and I'm hoping for a better America.
Well, I think that's something that is shared across the board. Ted Widmer, thank you so much for the time. I hope we can chat again soon.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
If you want to comment on any portion of our conversation, you're welcome to give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. Now, without further ado, the man whose name is on this radio program, the man who is the reason that all of you have tuned in today, live from Washington, D.C. on the eve of Donald Trump's second inauguration, the one and only Roger Stone. Roger, how are you, my friend? Thanks for the opportunity to fill in.
Frank, thank you very much for being able to fill in. I am in Washington, D.C., as you know. It has literally just begun snowing here. The weather has been miserable all day, but that didn't stop people from starting at 7 a.m. this morning to line up for what will be Donald Trump's last rally as a non-president. Taking place at the Capitol Center. The line literally went for miles in a cold rain, and it's a full house, to say the least. So the weather's not as bad as, say, 1960, when a blizzard hit Washington, D.C. for the inauguration of President John F. Kennedy. But the weather here has not dampened spirits at all. There's a feeling of hope and optimism and excitement in the air. You can literally feel it.
Since you mentioned that, was the decision to move this inauguration indoors to the Rotunda all about the weather? Others suspect that maybe it had more to do with security in light of the fact that President Trump's been already subjected to at least 2 assassination attempts.
Well, my best sources from the president's staff told me that it was weather-related, and I will believe them. But just based on my own feelings, my own opinion, I feel a lot safer. I was concerned, and I think I said this on the show last Sunday, right here on the Red Apple Audio Network, pardon me, that I was concerned about the idea of his standing out there on the portico in front of what could have been, a couple million people out in the open. I mean, we would consider that a conspiracy theory, but as you note, there have been 2 assassination attempts on him. Security here is extraordinarily tight. Just getting across town is very difficult because a number of the streets are shut down. So whether in the end the inauguration was moved into the rotunda, where you'll only have about 600 people total. Remember, the actual swearing-in ceremony is controlled by the U.S. Congress, not by the Trump Inauguration Committee or the incoming administration. You'll have much more limited access there. Sure, security will be very tight. And Trump's many supporters who would have been outside in the bitter cold will be watching in the Cap Center where the big rally is taking place today.
Obviously you and I were in close touch in the first administration as well. And even though you might not have said this too much publicly, I know how frustrated you were with the first part of the Trump administration, namely the fact that there were not any Trump supporters in it, with the exception of maybe Jeff Sessions, who had his own issues, and, 1 or 2 other folks. The first Trump cabinet seemed like largely a cabinet that could have easily been a Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton cabinet. What can you tell Trump supporters, MAGA people this time around, who may be concerned that the neocons, the establishment, the swamp, for lack of a better description, might infiltrate and drive the agenda in the second Trump administration as well?
Yeah, I really don't see that happening, Frank. The president is much more deeply engaged in this transition, far more than he was in 2017. I mean, in all honesty, Donald Trump came from the world of business, not the world of politics. I think he viewed everything through a 2-party prism, saying, well, the Republicans are for me, the Democrats are against me, and that's the way it'll work. And, of course, that was never true. There were always elements within the establishment Republican Party who were shocked by his nomination, were even more shocked by his election, and who were committed to an agenda quite different than his. But in 2017, he focused more on cabinet officers at the top rank. I'm not sure to what extent he focused on the issue of, deputy assistant secretaries, heads of independent agencies like the FCC and the FEC. Now he's far more personally engaged, and you're going to get a much more homogenous, much more united, much more pro-America first government in this administration. And I think that those who were in the last administration thought their job was to delay or dilute or derail the America First agenda. You're not going to see that this time.
The other thing that I wonder about is what happens come January of 2029, right? Will the Republican Party go back to being a Bush, McCain, Romney style party, or has Trump transformed the Republican Party into being a populist America First party again?
I think not. I think that Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party forever. Look, I think his nomination was the hostile takeover of the party. We had become, post-Reagan, the party of the country club, the party of Wall Street, the party of big business. We've become a globalist party. We've become a party that was going around the world looking for wars to get into where we had no inherent national interest. Trump has changed all that. I don't think we are ever going back. So we don't know who Trump's successor will be. Obviously, in politics, 4 years is a lifetime. 1 year is a lifetime. 1 week is a lifetime, as we have learned. But I do think the complexion of the party has changed dramatically. We're now the party of working people, the party of the middle class, the party of America First, the party of peace, the party of free speech. and I think the party of making America healthy again. I really don't see the party ever going back, because at the grassroots level, never mind the party leaders, but at the grassroots level where people vote in primaries and caucuses, this is Donald Trump's party. This is the America First Party. Don't see it changing.
Lastly, Roger, and you know this show's clock better than I do, so you know how many spots you have. So I'm going to ask you to give a brief response here. Talk to me about TikTok. TikTok is back online after being shut down last night. What do you see as the future of TikTok in the United States, and what would you like to see happen with TikTok?
Well, I'm concerned, Frank, in a quick answer, about the ability of a foreign government to use the TikTok app in order to seize data from the phones of individual Americans. If that's accurate, as some experts tell me they are, that concerns me. On the other hand, I am a free speech absolutist. So I personally have kind of a split view. We shall see on this. I'm not firmly in either camp at this moment, but I just told you my two concerns.
Mm-hmm. Roger Stone, have fun at the inauguration. I appreciate the opportunity to sit in, but everybody wants you back in this chair next week.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll be calling in to again tomorrow, so you'll be able to get the latest on the swearing in and far, far more. Thanks,
Outstanding.
Frank, and I'm glad to know my show's in good hands.
Absolutely. Thanks for it's in my hands. I don't want to get too carried away. Thanks for the opportunity. All right. 3 open lines. If you want to jump on board, we're going to take your calls in a moment. 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Custom window treatments are a small upgrade that have a big impact. No better time to shop than now at Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale now. Save up to 50% site-wide, plus a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All the presidents relied on man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man, Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
All right, this is Frank Morano sitting in for Roger Stone. Straight to the phones we go, 646-720-0635. Let me say hello to Liz in Florida. Hi there, Liz.
Hey, Frank, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
Listen, I just came off a cruise, and I must tell you, it seemed like the entire ship was thrilled to have Trump being inaugurated tomorrow. And to answer your question, I personally think that the fake media is the culprit. I think they've calmed down, and I see the hating because they realize that the American people are not stupid. So I think that most Americans now who actually believed that the media, were I'm so sorry. Okay, I think that the Americans who actually believe that believe the media actually realize the truth. So I think they would be a strong reason why there's a lot less animosity against President Trump. And I think deep down they know he's a true leader. And that's what we need right now. I think the truth has finally overcome the lies.
Liz, thank you. I appreciate it. I have a great deal to say based on what you said, but I want to, out of respect for the people that have been holding, try and get as many people as we can here. Judith in Brooklyn has been holding. Hi there, Judith.
Hi, Frank. Before I address the Middle East deal, I do want to say I am very excited for President Trump to make America again, okay? Back to like normalcy with normal American values. So I have 3 pointers I want to bring out, Frank, as far as this deal goes, which to me is a sham of a deal. But you know what? I'm just excited to have all the hostages come back as much as we can, for sure. But here's the deal. And here's what I want to say. Number one, if you're releasing 33 hostages in drips and drabs, like 3 now, so why can't they just then release 3, equal, like 3 hostages, 3 of those murderous prisoners, 4 later, then 4 in the phases, whatever. Why does it have to be like 1,000 of them against 33 innocent, civilians? That's 1.2. I don't think there's ever going to be a proper peace if Hamas has if they don't eliminate their like murderous educational system where literally they teach little preschoolers, and on. They actually have them sing songs of killing with knives and swords, and that's what they're all about, and that's what their agenda is, to just kill every Israeli, every Jewish person. So that has to change, and if it doesn't, you're going to have another generation like you have now, watching them, a bunch of murderous monsters. They're brought up this way, thinking this way it's to be, but also paid to slay. This paid to slay is ridiculous. If they don't eliminate all these things, how in the world are you going to have peace over there?
Judith, thank you. I appreciate it. I want to try and squeeze in one more call if we can. I just do want to say, obviously, it's always a risk in discussing the Middle East because these are very complicated issues with so much history behind them. It's difficult to do them justice in 20 or 30 seconds. But I don't think there's a bigger supporter of Israel on the planet than Alan Dershowitz. And if you watch that Alan Dershowitz documentary that came out this year, Dershowitz says very plainly that he's not against the Palestinians at all. And there are certain aspects of Palestinian society that are very good and that could be emulated elsewhere. And he specifically points to Ramallah in the West Bank. So at least according to Dershowitz, what they're doing in Ramallah is the right thing. So I guess how could we be doing a better job emulating the West Bank example as opposed to what Hamas is doing in Gaza? I think that's a question that whoever's in charge is going to have to figure out. Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Those of you listening on WABC, I'm going to continue for another hour. Those of you around the country, you can listen at WABCRadio.com. This is The Roger Stone Show. We'll continue straight ahead.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
This is Roger Stone, and this is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio, the most powerful, entertaining, and influential AM radio station on the planet. I'm in Washington, D.C. today at the invitation of my friend Donald Trump for the festivities surrounding the 47th presidential inauguration. I'll be here at 77 WABC from the official swearing-in ceremony and the official inaugural ball, where you can bet I'll be wearing white tie and tails as well as my top hat. You'll get all the latest on the presidential inauguration right here at 77 WABC. We are, of course, the crown jewel of AM radio. And now, my guest host, Frank Morano.
Thank you, Roger. It is great to be on the greatest radio station in the United States of America, 77 WABC, a station I am very honored to be a part of each and every weekday morning from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. I'll be on tonight as well. I'm hoping to get a hold of Fred Dreyer. I don't know if you remember Fred Dreyer, but Fred Dreyer was a terrific football player, and he played for the Giants, and then he became an actor and was great on the show Hunter. In fact, one of Curtis Sliwa's children is actually named Hunter. Now, unlike so much of what Curtis actually says, this is actually true. This is actually true. But he actually, his son Hunter is named for that show, Hunter, starring Fred Dreyer. And there's so much going on with these fires in L.A., and there's so much going on with this Trump inauguration tomorrow, and so much going on in the world of football, especially with the Rams. I'm hoping they'll still pull out this game over the Eagles, that I don't know anybody else really that's that capable of talking about fires, football, and Trump like Fred Dreyer is. So I'm hoping he'll join me. We'll kick things off with Dominic Carter. There's some news on the Wendy Williams front and news regarding TikTok, a lot of updates on other stories that we've been following. But we'll also talk about, obviously, what's going on in Washington tomorrow. There's snow outside. How bad is it? It doesn't, let's see. It looks like it's just starting to, looks like a little dusting at the moment. How bad is this going to be? Well, in 4 minutes, we're going to talk with Lloyd Lindsay Young, the greatest weather personality alive. And we hope he's alive for a long time, because there's nobody that says hello just like Lloyd Lindsay Young does, and nobody that knows more about the weather. He's going to give us his insight in just about 3 minutes. A little later this hour, we'll also check in with former Commerce Secretary in the Trump administration, Wilbur Ross, find out where things might be headed from an economic perspective. But the first thing I wanted to mention this hour, especially because this is, it's a New York radio station. I realize we have people listening all over the world, quite frankly. But there's a story out of New York that is getting a lot of attention around the world. And that has to do with Mayor Eric Adams meeting with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So Adams, basically, he went to this Martin Luther King Jr. event on Saturday. That was one day after dining with Donald Trump. And several hours later, the federally indicted Adams dodged when the press asked him about whether any aspect of his criminal case came up during his meeting with Trump. Let me tell you something. I don't care what Adams says. I don't care what Trump says. There is no way that didn't come up in their dinner. There's no way. It's the first thing on anybody's mind. And you're going to take the two guys that are the most important players in this story, Adams and Trump, and neither one is going to mention anything about it to the other. Come on. Of course it came up. The big question is, so Adams is under indictment. He's scheduled to go to trial, I believe, in April. Well, there are three big questions, right? The first big question is, does Adams continue to run for mayor while going on trial? The second question is does Trump pardon Adams? I don't see how Trump could have his U.S. attorney or his attorney general simply drop the charges. Since there's been a grand jury indictment, I don't see how you could simply just say, all right, you don't have to go through that anymore. But the question is Trump going to pardon Adams? And I think that's a question that got more and more attention, given the fact that Trump has been making a lot of comments that seem somewhat supportive of Adams, including going back to the Al Smith dinner. So that stoked a lot of speculation that he may pardon Adams. Now, obviously, if he pardons Adams, I have to think that makes it almost impossible for Adams to win a Democratic primary in New York City. Maybe not, but I think it certainly makes it difficult. Then the last question is, does Eric Adams run as a Republican? Because if he runs as a Republican, I think he's going to have a very difficult time with Curtis Sliwa in a primary. And I think it's going to be very difficult for him to win a Democratic primary as well. So I'd love to know your answers to any of those questions, and especially if you're someone who is a Trump supporter. I'd love to know if you would, a Trump supporter and an Adams critic, let me say that. Would you have a problem with Trump pardoning Adams? Let's say Adams goes through the trial in April and is convicted of a felony or multiple felonies. Would you have an issue with Trump pardoning him? And if you do, or if you don't, I'd like to know why or why not. Give me a call. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. 3 open lines here on 77 WABC, one of the greatest radio stations in New York history. When it comes to one of the greatest broadcasting icons in New York history, the man with 3 names has got to be at the top of the list, the great Lloyd Lindsay Young. Hello, Lloyd.
Hello, Frank. Hey, it's an honor to be on your program. Good afternoon, good evening. Frank, there's no business like snow business. Get ready. The suburbs of New York, man, we're talking about 6 to 9 inches of snow. Wow. Yeah, and right in the city, yes, we're going to paint the town white for sure. I would say 2 to 4 inches by tomorrow morning. So I'll tell you, Frank, the big story with this is the Arctic cold. Oh, my goodness. I mean, sub-zero wind chills in the outlying areas like northern New Jersey, probably along about Tuesday morning, indeed. And, of course, for the inauguration of the president, the wind chill factor is going to be right around 7 degrees. Not as bad as when Ronald Reagan took office in 1985, but pretty nasty. So they were smart to move that indoors. So, Frank, what do you want to know about the snow? And then I want to talk about the California fires.
Okay, well, Lloyd, first, selfishly, I'm going to head home to Staten Island and try and spend a little bit of time with my son before having to come back in for my show tonight. What is the snow situation looking like from Staten Island to Manhattan, this evening, say from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m.?
Not too terrible, Frank. To be honest, I think more like in the 2 to 3 inch category.
Okay.
Yeah, no more than 3 inches. You got to remember, Manhattan surrounded by water, Staten Island, the places that are really going to accumulate. For example, let's talk about North Jersey, places like Caldwell and Livingston, and then Orange and Putnam County, upstate New York. There, we're looking at 6 to 9 inches. And by the way, by Tuesday morning, they're looking at wind chills about 5 below zero. So the Arctic air, Frank, it's digging all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Believe it or not, let's talk about Houston, Texas. 3 to 4 inches of snow in the largest city in Texas. And there's even a possibility of a couple of inches of snow in Nolens, better known as New Orleans, and even, this is hard to believe, a possibility of a light snow in Tallahassee, Florida. How about that?
Those of us in the New York area this year, Lloyd, are we in store for a rough winter in terms of snowfall and snow accumulation? Are we in store for a mild winter, or is it too soon to tell?
Well, here's my answer. I think you're in store for a rough one. It's just some time to get going. You know, I remember having, lived there, that sometimes, even in March, it can get awfully nasty. Right now, by the way, Philadelphia is getting heavy snow or moderate to heavy snow as the Eagles play the Rams. But I'm telling you, looking ahead, to answer your question, typically February is the snowiest month in the Big Apple. It really is. And certainly March, I can remember some big blizzards in March. So I think here's the bottom line. Frank, temperatures much below average, snowfall above average. It's just taking time to get going.
All right, Lloyd, you're in California now. You're a California resident. Give us the latest on what's happening with these fires and tell us what role the weather is playing with respect to these fires.
Absolutely. I'm worried about tomorrow. Here's the bottom line. We have high wind warnings in effect again for the greater Los Angeles area, particularly the Burbank. By the way, there were wind gusts as high as 84 miles an hour. Now, it won't be as bad as the one that hit about a week ago. Top wind gusts, however, I'm thinking 35 to 50 miles an hour. Now, keep in mind, it's been extremely dry, a severe drought in Southern California. This is hard to believe. My hometown, downtown Los Angeles, second biggest city in America, has had only 3/100ths of an inch of rain in the last 8 or 9 months. It's so hard to fathom that. And by the way, no rain for the entire month of January. But as far as tomorrow is concerned, very worried. I would say from 6 a.m. tomorrow till midnight tomorrow night will be the critical time. Top winds 30 to 50 miles an hour, particularly in the San Fernando Valley, and also in what they call the Inland Empire, like, for example, Riverside, San Bernardino, Ontario, California. So, yeah, I mean, they're ready. They're standing by. They're prepared. Again, not as bad as the first one, but certainly reason for concern. I mean, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, we have a couple of arsonists probably out there that may take advantage of the situation. But no, it's reason for major concern. So we'll see what happens.
Indeed. Lloyd Lindsay Young, it's always a treat to talk with you. I appreciate the update. And now I feel much better about driving into work later.
Well, you'll be fine tonight. Go home and enjoy the family and do your great show beginning at 1 a.m. Eastern. Is that right tonight?
That's right, Lloyd. Yep. Appreciate it.
You're the man, Frank. Pleasure to be on your show.
The great Lloyd Lindsay Young. I love hearing his voice. I love hearing his insight into the weather. And again, I'd love it if he was part of the WABC family permanently. All right. 646-720-0635. If you want to comment on the prospects of a Trump pardon of Adams or the Adams campaign in general, specifically the speculation that he may run as a Republican. I'd love to hear your view on that. Let me say hello first to Bill in Queens. Hey there, Bill.
Hi, Frank. My name is Bill, registered Democrat, lifelong city resident. I don't vote the party line.
Good for you. I don't either.
I vote for whoever I feel at the time is needed. I'm not too happy with hearing that Trump's considering giving Mayor Adams a pardon. And basically, it's a law and order issue. I don't think it sends the wrong message. I think Trump's being set up for a quid pro quo accusation, especially if Adams records him. It facilitates this whole thing that he went through before as far as the quid pro quo thing goes. I wouldn't trust Adams if I was Trump. I think it sets up an improper path for government officials to conduct wrongdoing and then get off from being charged for any wrongdoing by seeking a pardon.
Now, let me ask you this, Bill, and I assume everything that you just said would apply the same way if we're talking about a Menendez pardon as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. The supporters, I don't want to say the supporters, both Menendez and Adams have said the same thing about their criminal cases that President Trump said about his, which is that this is totally politically motivated and that they're being targeted not for the crimes they committed, but for other things, because there's people that want to get them and drive them out of office because they're making some sort of change that the status quo doesn't want made. Does that argument resonate with you at all?
No.
It's simple as that. Well, if that's the case, then I don't see how you could be okay with the pardon. Bill, thank you. Appreciate the insight. 646-720-0635. Frank Morano sitting in for Roger Stone. We're going to try and check in with former Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in just a moment. Let me say hello to Chris in Bethpage. Chris, you're on the Roger Stone Show with Frank Morano.
Hey, Frank. Yeah, I love you in this slot. Great. Anyhow, and I'm a big fan, of course, of your night show.
Thank you. That's nice.
So anyhow, Frank, I'm a big Trump supporter, and I don't like Eric Adams that much. I work in the city, and, what I see every day what a terrible job this guy's done, between the illegal immigrants and the pot smokers everywhere. It's just he's done a horrible job. But that being said, I'm all for Trump pardoning him because first of all, what specifically is he? It's almost like the Trump stuff. Like, I can't get a grasp on what Adams is being accused of. He upgraded his seats on the airlines, and it seems to me like a very. That's why I think Trump's sympathetic to it, because he was running by the same, the Alvin Braggs and the Tisha Adams, the same two people. So I'm all for Trump doing this.
Well, it's interesting because there are really kind of two parts to the case as I read it. And I'm not an attorney, but, I have followed a number of criminal cases pretty closely. And the one part of the case that I agree with you is totally silly and completely innocuous and really just almost nothing is these upgrades. I mean, the first class flights, the hotel upgrades. I don't know of a politician in America that's not taking the same thing. You could get that kind of thing just by using points, quite frankly. The other aspect that's a little bit more insidious is the thought that Adams might have been using straw donors, because New York City has this matching funds program where the taxpayers kick in $8 for every contribution. And if that's the case, if the Turkish government or allies to the Turkish government were arranging the use of straw donors, and then that resulted in the city giving the Adams campaign $8 to 1 for fake donations, that is a pretty big deal. Chris, thank you. And that's a real crime. And we'll see where it goes at trial. Maybe they'll be able to produce some evidence, meaning the Adams people, that shows that this wasn't the case, or at least that Adams didn't know about it, or that there was no quid pro quo. It's much more difficult to prove bribery in light of what the Supreme Court has done to the bribery laws now. So maybe if he's convicted, maybe he'll be overturned on appeal. I don't know. But I am also interested. I disconnected Chris without asking his opinion of Adams running as a Republican, of if he thinks Republicans would get behind him. Well, if you want to weigh in on that question, you're welcome to. Hey, before we get to Wilbur Ross, who I hope is going to join us in just a minute, let me say hello to Larry in Brooklyn. Hello, Larry.
Look, I think Trump is wading in waters once again that he shouldn't be in. I think he's doing so naively. He has a penchant for courting danger. The only reason I could see him doing this, in my opinion, is to offset Cuomo. In other words, if what you said about Adams will still run in the Democratic primary, and he will still try to win and try to knock Cuomo out of the race, because Cuomo and Trump have a visceral hatred for each other. And that was well earned by Cuomo. That's the only reason I could see. Otherwise, Trump doesn't need Adams for anything, except possibly to opt out of the marijuana laws in New York. If he wants to really save New York should opt out of the marijuana laws. But I don't know if he could do that without the city council going along with it.
Interesting. I don't think the city council is a factor. I mean, it's a state law, so the city council is not going to nullify or support a state law. Larry, thank you. We're going to try and talk with Wilbur Ross in just a moment, the former Secretary of Commerce. And we're still going to have some time to chat with you as well. 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
I apologize. I was just informed by Jonas, who's doing a great job running the board today, that I had the audacity, the temerity to refer to this show as The Other Side of Midnight. I apologize to Roger and to management. It is not The Other Side of Midnight. The Other Side of Midnight will be on tonight, really technically tomorrow morning at 1 a.m. I'm going to kick things off with my friend Dominic Carter. We got a great show. I'm hoping to talk with Fred Dreyer as well. But this is, of course, the Roger Stone Show. We're going to chat with the great Wilbur Ross, hopefully, in the next couple of minutes. And, I'm told that I listen to Roger's show regularly. I know Roger usually gives a recipe for every show. I am going to try my hand at giving a recipe out this hour as well and see how that turns out. We'll see. All right. In the meantime, a lot of you have been kind enough to call in. We'll try and squeeze in as many as we can here. 646-720-0635. Joseph is in New York City. Hi there, Joseph.
No pardon, no pardon. And good afternoon to you, Frank, or almost Joe Piscopo's Sunday night with Sinatra evening. Roger Stone wrote a book, which I believe in, and I don't know your book. I don't know your views. President John F. Kennedy's assassination. So many have different views, and even Dominic Carter, he will only believe in a newspaper or a television channel information. And on your overnight show, you had so many people writing so many books on the JFK assassination.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'm not clear on what your question is.
If there is so much information on the JFK assassination, what do we believe in?
Yeah, it's a good question, Joseph. Look, and thank you for the call. We're going to chat with Wilbur Ross in a second. I am one of those people. I am open to the idea that it was a conspiracy. I also could, and I realize this is such a wishy-washy politician's answer. When I hear the people explain why there wasn't a conspiracy, I honestly find that pretty convincing as well. I think it's more likely than not that there was more than one shooter involved. I tell you what makes so many people suspect about this is how the federal government has handled this. They should have released all these documents 6 years ago when they were supposed to be released as a result of that law President Clinton signed with the Kennedy Assassination Records Act. There are all these documents that the government, Republican and Democratic presidents now, have withheld. And I don't think there's any secret document anywhere locked in a drawer that says, oh, the real second shooter was this person. But the fact that they're so suspicious about it and protecting who knows what from who knows who, it really does feed into my cynical view as a New Yorker. Someone who is, was an integral part of the first Trump administration, one of the few people to make it the entire Trump administration from start to finish, is somebody who's also become an authority on Trumponomics and many other things related to the economy. And that is former Secretary of Commerce and the author of a terrific book called Risks and Returns, Creating Success in Business and Life. Wilbur Ross. Mr. Secretary, it's great to talk with you again.
Well, thank you for having me on.
And anecdotally, Mr. Secretary, I happened to have breakfast with your ex-wife, Betsy McCoy, last week, and I brought your name up, and she was effusive in her praise for you. And I don't know of many ex-wives that would have as many kind things to say as yours did of you. So that must speak well of you, even if you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to the economy, which I realize you do.
Well, that's a whole lot of nice stuff.
All right, Mr. Secretary, let me ask you about, first, hopes and fears. We're heading into a new Trump administration. I think everybody, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, wants the economy to do well. It's no secret that sometimes presidents make great economic moves, make great economic picks, and the economy, for reasons that may have nothing to do with the presidency, has other plans. What are you forecasting for the next few years, short term and long term, in terms of the country's economic health?
I think the outlook is pretty good as long as consumer confidence holds up. As you know, consumer is about 70% of our economy, so that's a gigantic factor. I'm not a believer that Trump's tariff policies are going to disrupt things. I don't think they'll be that inflationary, and I don't think they will cause shortages or any other upset that will knock things out. What we do have to think about, though, is it's been a long time since there was a real economic recession. the COVID recession was not a normal economic recession. It was brought on by political people and the reaction to COVID. So that I don't count. And so it could be in the next 4 years sometime we'll have a recession. But I don't see it at all near term, and I certainly don't see it being caused by his policy.
You mentioned tariffs not being inflationary. A lot of folks point not only to the president's tariff policy, but also the anticipated deportations, which may have a bit of a chilling effect on the number of illegal immigrants in the country here and those seeking to come here. It's no secret there are a lot of illegal immigrants working in restaurants, hotels, in construction trades, all in many other fields all over the country. And part of the reason they're so able to find employment is because they're willing to work for wages that legal citizens or legal residents are not willing to work for. Do you see a scenario in which the combination of tariffs and a stricter immigration policy could be inflationary?
No, I really don't in this regard. If you look at restaurant prices, they have been going right through the roof. So there's certainly no evidence that having a lot of illegal immigrants working in restaurants has held the prices down. Second, what we really need in this country is higher participation of working age people in the workforce. We only have about 63% are participating right now. If we could get just 1% more to participate, that would be over 2 million actual Americans added to the workforce. So the idea that somehow we're very short of labor and that somehow whatever cheap labor there is has been holding prices down, I don't see it. Can you name me a single restaurant you go to where prices are lower than they were last year?
I can't. Not in New York, anyway. Not in New York, that's for sure. Hey, I try to be open-minded and fair. And although I'm a Trump supporter, I have many friends that are Democrats that I correspond with regularly. And one of them wrote to me yesterday that Trump's luck is just incredible. He's going to be taking credit for ending inflation that's already come down, the Gaza truce, creating good-paying jobs for workers, parenthesis, CHIPS Act and infrastructure spending. And basically, this friend of mine wrote to me as if that the work that Biden has done, namely the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure spending, whatever else, that Trump is going to be the beneficiary of that in terms of economic numbers. What do you say to someone like that who may have that view?
Well, as you remember, I'm the one who originated the CHIPS Act.
I do indeed.
And we ought to think about what did the CHIPS Act become when it was passed. We had requested $50 billion to promote semiconductor fabrication facilities and advanced research in the U.S. They added over $450 billion of extraneous social experiments to that. Most of that just put more money in the pockets of people without them doing any more work, and in fact, in many cases, not doing work at all. So I don't see that was that beneficial. $50 billion was good for semiconductors, and it's important for that industry. But in a roughly $30 trillion economy, it's a rounding error. So the notion that the CHIPS Act in and of itself was a big deal that will help the economy, I don't buy that. It's more the case that it has continued this problem of people not working because they get more money for not working than they did when they ever were working.
Mr. Secretary, one issue that is very much an economic issue and a political issue and potentially also a national security issue is the debate over TikTok. Today, it was supposed to be banned because of this bipartisan legislation Congress passed and President Biden signed. President Trump has indicated he'd like TikTok to continue. The Supreme Court looked at it and said, nope, this is what Congress passed. We're going to let the ban go forward. This very much is a commerce issue because there are a whole bunch of people that make a lot of money relying on TikTok and a lot of other businesses that use TikTok as a big part of their marketing strategy. I'm curious of what you think of the TikTok ban on both the substantive aspect, meaning should it be banned for all the reasons people have stated, and from a procedural aspect, meaning President Trump has indicated he wants to put forward an executive order to pause this. Is that democratic for a president to actually put a pause on legislation that was passed by Congress?
Well, that's a very complex set of questions. My own view on TikTok is I think the problem is not the fact of TikTok. I think the problem is its ultimate ownership and the ultimate control by the Chinese. All those people who get a living out of TikTok could just as well get it out of TikTok if it were American-owned as if it were Chinese-owned. And a couple reasons for that. One, I don't think it's appropriate that the Chinese government potentially knows more about the behavior patterns of young people in America than their parents do. I don't think that's a good thing because TikTok really learns a lot about its viewers. The second feeling about it is, as you're probably aware, TikTok is banned in China. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's banned in China is they were afraid that it might have too much power politically. Well, I believe if you analyze what the TikTok messages have been, mostly subliminal messages, but the messaging clearly has been anti-conservative and anti a lot of things that you and I hold dear. So I think it's the fact of Chinese government being in a position to manipulate TikTok and to get information from it. Those are what bother me. To have a bunch of dancing kids and music and all that, I think would be fine if it weren't this link to China.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Secretary, let me end with this. You are the only person that I've talked to today, and probably the only person that I'm likely to speak to today, who has been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. When President Trump nominated you for Secretary of Commerce, you were subjected to confirmation hearings, and ultimately the Senate confirmed you. Now, all of Trump's basket of nominees are going through this. The three that the odds makers pin as having the most difficult time getting confirmed, or at least the rockiest time on the way to confirmation, are Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS, Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence, and Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. As someone who has a unique perspective of having gone through this process, where do you pin their prospects, and what advice would you give them as someone that's been through this process before?
Well, in my own case, as you know, we had a very divided Congress, especially in the Senate. And I've got 72 affirmative votes and only 27 negative votes. So it's possible to get a very strong confirmation vote even in a divided Senate. As to the individual posts, Secretary of Defense, I thought, handled himself very, very well in the hearing. And I gather from others that he handled himself very well when he made his courtesy calls to the senators before the hearing. So I think he certainly won't get anything like 100 votes, but that isn't, the margin isn't so important. I think he has a very strong probability of being confirmed, and he's probably the one that was the most controversial before all this started. Robert Kennedy, I don't really know, and I don't believe that he's had his hearings. If he has, I've missed them. So I don't know what would be the reaction to his actual performance. But I do like very much Maynard Oz, who is the designee to be the head of the CMBS, which is very, very important because of its role in healthcare funding.
Mr. Secretary, it's always a treat to chat with you. I always learn a great deal. I hope we can talk again soon.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Wilbur Ross, former Secretary of Commerce in the Trump administration and the author of a terrific book, which is kind of part memoir and part, management guidebook, and just has a lot of interesting stories. It's called Risks and Return, and it's about a lot of things that would help you in the workplace, even if you have no interest in being a billionaire or any interest in serving in a presidential cabinet. Risks and Returns, Creating Success in Business and Life. All right. We're going to take your calls in a moment. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. And, you don't have to chat about politics. I know the Eagles are ahead by a touchdown over the Rams. My friend, Judge Brendan Lantry, is not able to discuss politics. If that applies to you, maybe that's you. Give me a call, 646-720-0635. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. Straight ahead.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Yes, this is not Roger Stone. It's Frank Morano, his friend and colleague. Taking your calls at 646-720-0635. In a few minutes, I will give you my recipe of the week, something you can absolutely take to the bank. Let me see. Hey, I see that my friend Sarah Simons, who's a regular contributor to my radio program Overnights, and actually called in to Curtis Lewa's program yesterday because she didn't realize that I wasn't on and she was stuck talking to Curtis. I see Sarah is calling in. Sarah, it is great to connect with you. Hello.
Hey, Frank. Good to hear you in the afternoon hours, not the after midnight kind
Thank you. And if people are wondering your connection to Roger Stone, you're actually from a town or a province called Rogerston, right?
Well, that's really funny, but my connection is deeper than that because you, should we say this on air, introduced me to Roger Stone and Kristen Davis years ago. Remember we went to that event? Let's call it an event.
That's right. That's right. Given some of the things that I'm contemplating, I probably shouldn't mention this, but you, Roger, the Manhattan Madam, and me made a visit to the Museum of Sex. That was 15 years ago.
You said it.
I said it. Hey,
I remember just going along thinking this is what people of New York do. Go along with it, Sarah. But then I had lunch with Roger and Kristen. He invited me to the pizza place under the I don't know what you call it, under the tunnel. Anyhow, doesn't matter. But yes, that I have fond memories of him. And yes, I do live in a place called Roger Stone. That's bizarre.
It really is. Sarah, very quickly, give me your thoughts from an outsider's perspective, on a British perspective, on what we're seeing in terms of the American presidential transition tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm not politically minded very much, but what I can tell you is Melania is morphing into Donald.
Physically, emotionally, psychologically?
Physically.
How do you mean? Physically? Really?
I said this to Curtis earlier, and if there's a picture, you'll probably see it. It's quite iconic, I think. And it's a picture of them standing, looking over at the fireworks, etc. She has bigger shoulder pads than him. And if you look at their faces, she's just sort of, I think he's cloned her, quite frankly.
I don't know. Melania still looks a lot better to me than the president does.
Sarah, she does, but she's looking a little bit like the Wilderstein. What was that woman who's just died?
The Catwoman, Joyce,
yes.
Wildenstein.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you. It's always a treat talking with you, and I'll look forward to the next time we get to chat on the radio. 646-720-0635. I was going to say something else very informative. I don't remember. Let me take one more call before we go to break. Sandra is in New Jersey. Hi, Sandra.
Oh, hi, Frank. Oh, I wanted to say something because you spoke about Martin Van Buren earlier. And do you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, good. Okay. So I wanted to say, we all say okay all the time, and that word okay means approval. But I don't know if people know that word came from Martin Van Buren. The supporters loved him, and they used to call him Old Kinderhook. And then when he would sign something, he would sign it okay. And that word okay became world now. I mean, the whole world says okay every single day. And I just thought people should know it comes from Martin Van Buren.
You know, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sandra. I actually did know that, but a lot of people don't. And it's always funny how things take on a life of their own and how they become ingrained in the culture. Sandra, thank you. It's interesting, you know, I said hello to Sandra when I picked up the phone. And you know what was second to hello when they made the decision that hello is what people should say when they pick up the phone? What finished second after hello was what is wanted. Can you imagine if you picked up the phone and instead of saying hello, you said, what is wanted? I mean, think of how different the world would be. You know, so she's right. The things that happened and the effects on language, you never know. All right. My recipe of the day and your phone calls straight ahead.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
9 minutes until 6 o'clock. This is the other. I knew it was going to happen to me. This is the Roger Stone Show. I promise you I didn't do that intentionally. You know, you get in the habit of saying this, you know, figure 3 segments per day, 3 segments per hour, 4 times a day. That's 12 times a day, 5 days a week. You say this 60 times a day for 4 years. And old habits are tough to break. But this is the Roger Stone Show. I'm Frank Morano. I'll be back at 1 a.m. tonight with The Other Side of Midnight. Hopefully Dominic Carter and Fred Dreyer will be able to join me. Do you ever watch the show Frasier? I'm forcing my wife to watch that show now for the first time. And I would be dishonest if I said that that wasn't putting at least a slight strain on our relationship. The coercive nature of the TV viewing being the difficult aspect of it. But there's one episode of Frasier, I think it's season 1 or 2, where Frasier and his brother take over a restaurant. And they call it French for the Happy Brothers restaurant. It's a good episode. It's a fun episode. But the chef quits in the middle of the grand opening. And so does the rest of the staff. So Frasier and his brother and all their friends have to start acting as the staff. And Frasier's the waiter. Niles is the chef. They're going on and on and on. And some restaurant critics come in, and one of the restaurant critics says, "Oh, Frasier, I can't wait to try your chef's specialty. I hear he does amazing things with eel." Now, the chef has just left. He quit on the job, so he's not there. He can't do anything with eel. So Frasier says, and I've had the privilege of interviewing Kelsey Grammer before, and he's a real gentleman and a treat to talk to. But Frasier says to the restaurant critic, "Oh, no, that was his old specialty. You really must try his new masterpiece, scrambled eggs." And it's funny because scrambled eggs is very, or as I call them, scrambled eggs, is very easy to make. And because I am not that proficient in cooking, that is the recipe that I am going to bring you today. So without further ado, here is Frank's foolproof scrambled eggs. Now, the first thing you need to do is to take a frying pan, a large frying pan, and put it on low to medium heat. Then oil the pan. Oil the pan, to grease it a little bit to, take away the stick. Okay. And you leave the heat on. Leave the heat on that pan. Then crack some eggs, maybe 3 eggs, into a bowl. Then, especially if you live in New York City, compost the eggshells. Very important. And do not put milk in the scrambled eggs. That is a popular mistake. And believe it or not, they actually become creamier and softer without milk. I know they say sometimes you need milk or cream to have like a fat base to mix with the eggs. We'll get to that. Okay. Do not put milk in that mixture. Just put a little salt and pepper. This is actually a trick I learned from Margot Katzimatidis. I actually use truffle salt when I'm making the eggs for myself. I don't use it for my wife because she doesn't like the taste of truffle. Put a little truffle salt and a little pepper, and then whisk vigorously. Whisk and 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 whisk. If you think you've over whisked, keep whisking. Then you're going to pour the eggs into the pan, which should already be on low heat, and it's nice and heated up. And then you pour that in there. Now, this is where that fat that you have to add to the scrambled eggs comes in. Take a small little bit of butter. Doesn't matter if it's salted butter or unsalted butter. Just make a little bit of butter and put it into the eggs and watch the butter melt into the scrambled eggs mixture. Then let it sit. Let it sit on the heat. And then right before the moment that it starts to harden and solidify, you start stirring the eggs with a spatula, not a black plastic spatula, but any other type of spatula, in a figure 8. You have to stir it in a figure 8. That'll make sure that they burn evenly and that nothing gets too much attention. Use that figure 8 and continue to cook and stir until the eggs are mostly set, but still slightly runny. It's got to be a figure 8. Then you're going to sprinkle shredded cheese. Ideally, you want 2 different types of cheese in there minimum. My friend Judge Lantry makes these Manchego eggs. I have not seen his methodology for that, but they're very good. One day, if he ever gets a non-political radio show, maybe he can talk about these Manchego eggs. I will use generally a little cheddar, a little Swiss, and maybe some mozzarella. Sprinkle the shredded cheese evenly across the eggs. Got to be evenly. Then continue to cook for another minute or so, or until the cheese melts and the eggs are fully cooked to your desired consistency. Then also what I'd like you to do is keep turning the heat on and off while that stirring process is going on. On the heat, off the heat, on the heat, off the heat. And then finally, when they're done, transfer these scrambled eggs to a plate, throw some fresh herbs on there, maybe some toast, and enjoy your cheesy scrambled eggs. That's what you got to do. That is your recipe. Hopefully it's in keeping with the great recipe traditions Roger Stone puts out there. All right. Before we run out of time, by the way, if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can. I'm at facebook.com/Morano fan. We're also on Twitter at Frank Morano. It's Frank Morano. Before we run out of time, I want to say hello to Lynn, who's calling from here in New York. Lynn, got about 40 seconds, but it's all yours.
Okay. So I think he should not be let off. And there were other situations
Adams, right?
Adams. Yes, sorry. When he came into office, we were fighting a mid-block zoning situation where they were doing a high-rise mid-block, which is illegal. He walks into office and says, just get it done. It was passed. So how was that influenced?
It's a good question, Lynn, and thank you very much for the call. I'm sorry we didn't have more time to chat. I'm not going to be angry at a mayor for cutting through bureaucracy because I think there's way too much bureaucracy and there's too many things that don't get done. But he's done some other things that I think we could be pretty sore about. Hey, this has been a treat. Thank you to Roger Stone, John Catsimatidis, and Chad Lopez. I'll see you at 1 a.m. Frank Morano, good day.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.